The Mississippi abortion case in the U.S. Supreme Court was a factor in the threat made against Justice Brett Kavanaugh. The suspect has been charged with attempted murder of the Supreme Court justice. Detectives say the suspect reported being upset about the recent leak of the draft decision in the Mississippi abortion case, which could overturn Roe v. Wade. This morning, we have a live interview with Mississippi College professor Dr. Godfrey Garner, a professor of Homeland Security and Counterterrorism at the private college in Clinton. Good morning, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
Do you think that this threat made against Justice Brett Kavanaugh on Wednesday is an indication that extremism may be growing in our country?
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. Actually, it's just one of many indications, but it's probably the most overt one, obviously, attempting to kill a Supreme Court justice.
Now, the suspect who made that threat was reportedly upset about the leak of the U.S. Supreme Court's draft decision, which could soon overturn Roe v. Wade. So do you think Mississippi should be on heightened alert for potential extremist acts since its abortion case has upset so many across the country?
Yes, I do. And as a matter of fact, I've been talking to the security people at the church that I attend, friends of mine, and telling them just to be aware. It's the church that I attend at Pine Lake is the largest church in the state. And I do believe that the people who want to make their voices heard would get the most bang for their buck eventually coming to Mississippi, since this is the source of the case. And of course, they'd get the most bang for their buck here by attacking the largest church in the state. And they've already indicated their desire to attack other religious facilities around the country. So yes, I think we should be aware of that and be prepared for it.
Now, many people have been very outspoken against other U.S. institutions recently, and protesters have targeted other homes of Supreme Court justices, and citizens stormed the U.S. Capitol January 6th, and many people have been outspoken against law enforcement. Is the citizen opposition we're seeing now basically at the same level it's always been, or are the current tensions more intense than they have been in the past?
Yeah, they're much more intense. Obviously, the people in the country who have a propensity for doing something like this are looking at our federal government and our state government, but mostly our federal government, and seeing that there's not a lot of pushback. There's not a lot of consequences for doing things like this. So they're like kids in a way. When a kid pushes the envelope and they see that there's not a lot of pushback, they're going to push it a little bit further, and they're doing that, and they're going to continue to do it until some restrictions come along, and until the federal government steps in and begins to enforce laws. Right now, what we're seeing is the voices within the government not only not enforcing it, but encouraging it, such as what Senator Chuck Schumer did the other day. He bears a lot of responsibility for what this kid did yesterday.
And, don't get me wrong, the United States does welcome peaceful protests and free speech, but what are some characteristics that do define someone's behavior as extremist?
Well, most of the people who've done things like this throughout recent history are people who really see themselves as not really having an identity. They're unknown individuals, and they see, hey, if I go out and kill this Supreme Court justice, or if I go out and there was a justice's son that was killed in her home just for a ruling that she made up in the Northeast not too long ago, this will immediately propel me from a nobody to someone who's well known all over the country. So when they see, in some tentative encouragement to do something like this, they say, hey, that's where I can make my name. That's where I can make myself known. So, and obviously they're not thinking correctly, but there's people all over the world that are doing that or thinking that way.
And the U.S. Department of Homeland Security did extend the heightened threat environment status this week for the country for another 6 months, saying it expects the threat environment to become more dynamic as several high-profile events could be exploited to justify acts of violence against a range of possible targets. So what are your thoughts on the DHS's assessment of the current threat environment?
I think it was a correct assessment. We've got several things coming up this summer that typically generate a lot of pushback and a lot of over the top reactions. And the abortion ruling is one, but the elections coming up towards the end of the summer is another one. And they're going to be heating up. The rhetoric on both sides is going to be heating up throughout the summer. But yeah, there's several things coming up that typically generate this type of activity. So yeah, I think it was an appropriate call.
And do you have any ideas of what could be some effective ways to reduce and prevent acts of domestic extremism?
Yeah, for people like Chuck Schumer to keep his mouth shut. That when you say, go out there and show what you think or do what you think should be done, and you're basically sort of covertly okaying these over the top reactions. And our public officials have to take a stand and tell people what their appropriate reactions are and what they are not. And they're not doing that now. But that's my opinion.
Well, Dr. Garner, thank you so much for joining us once again. It was great talking to you, and with everything going on, hey, we could be talking to you for a third time. So we really do appreciate your time.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.